So we appreciate you all joining again. Today's webinar is all focused on pre-construction in RedTeam Flex. We're going to be talking all about the workflows in RedTeam Flex for the pre-construction features we have fairly recently rolled out to you all. We're going to talk a little bit about some just general tips and tricks for those workflows that we would like to share with you. All, of course, optional, but very much things we think you might find valuable. This webinar is intended for you guys to not only come attend and listen and all of that, but to ask questions. So please feel free to do that. We have our, let's actually talk a little bit about the agenda. Our plan is to go over some of the feedback that we've received from you guys on our pre-construction functionality. We're going to talk a little bit about those best practices in estimates, bid packages, and so forth. And we're going to talk a little bit about what's coming up soon related to pre-construction items. So we would love to share that with you guys, and we're looking for your feedback. We're also going to be putting some polls out there throughout the webinar. So please, if you can answer those for us, that kind of data is so valuable for us. We really appreciate hearing from you guys. That voice of the client is so important to us. So please keep an eye out for the polls that pop up throughout today's webinar. If you haven't heard of me, I'm Jennifer. Nice to meet you all. I am the product manager for RedTeam Flex and for RedTeam Go. And today's focused on RedTeam Flex, but we are joined as well by one of our subject matter experts, Neil, from the RedTeam Flex side. He is our SME for financial management, but I'll tell you, Neil is a absolute juggernaut of information for RedTeam. So he will be as well on the call presenting some items. And then kind of on the supporting side, we have Nicole Chance as well, who's our product marketing manager, and she's going to be the one going through those polls with us today and things like that. So she'll just be kind of supporting in the background. But once again, we appreciate you guys being here. We're really excited to show you guys all this content today. Okay, I'm going to dive right into this now that we've gotten some things done. You might see polls pop up. Like I said, you don't have to answer them right away. They'll stay up for a little while. But let's go ahead and dive right into building estimates. I'm actually going to turn this over to Neil. Neil's going to go through the process of what building estimates looks like in RedTeam Flex today. And then we'll circle back around with me at the end for some tips and tricks on that estimate.
Sounds good. So we're going to take a look first at how to go ahead and create an estimate in RedTeam Flex. Now, one of the biggest changes to the estimate building is that we've made it into a spreadsheet style, because we all know that everyone loves spreadsheets, right? That's our favorite thing in the world, to open up an Excel spreadsheet. So we decided to go ahead and tailor that experience to our estimate, which we're going to see here in a moment. But first thing, we are going to add some cost codes. Now, the cost code window can be moved around, so you can put it wherever you want it to be. And then using the search functionality, you can look for whatever you need. So you can use a simple term, you can use the cost code number. Anything you put in there will search through all the cost codes available in your database, make them easy to find. And then you can add them by adding the checkbox, but you don't have to go ahead and add them one at a time. Here you can see that after searching, I'm looking for more cost codes, and I'm adding them to it. So I don't have to do one at a time. I can click as many as I want through the main window. So if I know I want to search through the whole thing, I can. Or showing here once again, I'm searching for a separate one, and you can see everything I've selected at the top there. Then hitting add, we're adding them all at once. And here you can see, very similar to how you'd expect from Excel or Google Sheets, have those cells and those rows, and everything populates inside there. I'm entering in the quantities, and really importantly, as I enter quantities and units of measure, the actual estimate is calculate everything immediately. You don't have to hit save, you don't have to wait. The moment I hit enter, it calculated all over the way on the total and the subcontract based upon the information I entered. And then we also have the category. You can select if you want to do labor, material, other, equipment. You can select the specific category. Then change out, for example, here I'm making this 35 hours. Then we're putting in how much per hour. So if you know that information, you can put it in directly. And once again, there we can see the calculations are immediate. Now, anywhere you see blue in there, you can click on. So that's our way of making it easy to understand. Any of the blue options can be clicked on. And here I'm going ahead and showing how the totals are being updated as we go. One other really useful function is adding the narratives. So here I'm opening up, I'm adding a narrative. This is to provide additional information either internally if you don't show it on the proposal, or if you show it on the proposal, you can actually have your owner that you're sending out your proposal see specifically what this assembly item is or additional information about what you're going to be doing for them. So you can put as much as you'd like in there to go ahead and provide a little more context. This also is another option where you don't really have to hit save or anything else. Once I close the box here, it go ahead and it will save it. So when I go back in and reopen it, it's still there. Don't have to click any buttons, don't have to worry about losing any information. And then at the very bottom, we have our supplemental markups. These two came in automatically, but you can add as many as you may need. So here we have additional supplemental markups, just adding a couple more just to show the functionality. You can select as many as you need per project. And then you'll go ahead and affect total price. Jennifer's going to go over a little later about unit prices where you can go ahead and make some updates to the supplemental markups as well. And you can also actually enter in the fee at the bottom according to the fixed priced construction management or time and material type of proposal you're going to send out and update the fee amounts directly right there per project. So you can tailor it to what you need. And you have total cost or total prices options as well.
And I'm going to talk a little bit more in a bit about the proposal types as well, and as well about how you can adjust that total price, especially in a case where you have a fixed price project. Okay, perfect. Okay, so the next thing Neil's going to talk about is the other way that we can enter estimates, right? Which is not necessarily using that builder that he just showed, but rather doing it through a spreadsheet import.
Yeah, because once again, we love spreadsheets.
Yes, we do.
So we're going to go back into the estimate. This time, we're not going to build it manually. Maybe we gave it off to an estimator and they went ahead and they filled everything else out for us already, or we have a template we use all the time. You can go ahead and in that blue icon there, download the estimate template and then go ahead and add it there. Once it goes through, it does have an error checker. So this told us, hey, there was a problem with the actual template. And then when we pull it up and take a look at it, it tells us with the highlighted cells exactly what the problem might be. So then you can go ahead and change it. This was just numbers were reversed. So we went and update it. We go ahead and go back and reopen the import estimate, which is found in the new button there. Add the corrected file. It checks it again, no other problems, tells you it's loaded, and it pulls in everything that's from that sheet. Here I'm showing that it actually does pull in all the assembly items, so you could pull in everything you want to put together immediately. You don't have to just add the cost codes. If you wanted the assembly items all set up and ready to go, and every single little portion of the estimate, it's all done for you with one single import. Now, once that's completed, you could export this estimate. And let's say I'm here showing Winter Park Building 1 for this aquarium. If I had, let's say, a Building 2 that's almost a similar type of construction build out, I can go export it, flip over to that other building, go ahead and go back to the estimate. And I can take that exported file and just simply using the import estimate. And this time, instead of using the pre-built one, use the export, and it'll go ahead and bring in that copied file. So exactly the same as the original one, and you're ready to go with making whatever manual changes or specifics to this project. Nice and simple.
Perfect. Simple, yes. So with that in mind, I do want to just bring up from the product side. So one of the things we have been hearing, we did mention we were going to bring up some of the feedback we've been getting from clients, right? We do know one that was popular is the ability to import from another project. So Neil did just show right now how you can do that still functionally. You can still export from another job and import using the spreadsheet import function. However, we do totally understand that for some of you, it's just easier to be able to select the project to import from and do it that way. And so that's something that this quarter we are planning to bring back. We do have that already in our pipeline to bring back that option. So while today we don't see that, today you do have to do the export from another job import into another via the spreadsheet, we will be giving you back that option to import from another job. So anybody who might be here wondering, what the status of that is coming back this quarter. So you will be able to do that without the spreadsheet. However, you can see in Neil's example, right, the spreadsheet can be really useful because you could export it from another job. You could change things you want before you then import it. Of course, you can always change things in the estimate after the import as well, so long as you're still in that request status. So either way, but I did want to make sure I addressed that because I know that is a popular request. All right. Okay, so now coming to my part, I want to talk a little bit about some tips for your efficient estimates, right? Ways to do efficient estimates here. So, I'm just going to kind of talk about these bullet points and I'll kind of show them as well on my end. But one of the things that is very useful for building estimates in Red Team Flex specifically is to utilize unit prices. Unit prices being those negotiated rates that you have already agreed to with your client. Especially in CM jobs, these can be really useful. So utilizing those unit prices is going to be really helpful when you're building estimates. And we'll look at an example of that here in just a second. The other thing would be building what we call parametric assemblies. So assemblies that have variable and non-variable items. Again, I'll show you an example, but basically being able to build an assembly that has all of the different items that are going to be needed to perform that work. And some of those items might be variable based on the overall quantity of the assembly, and some of them may not. And so you have the ability to indicate which of those are variable, which are not. Again, I'll give you an example here in just a bit. And then also saving as a master assembly. You may find that you're often doing this very similar looking estimates with cost code assemblies, let's say, for instance, for electrical, and you've got all the same items very commonly that you would like to be able to do on other projects. You want that to be something you could pull into another project without having to use an import or without having to recreate manually on that, estimate for that new job, all those different items. Well, you could save that then as a master, what we call a master assembly. This does require permission to do it. And again, I'll show you what that looks like in a minute here. But that is another way that saves you time. You could create a master assembly that's something you could then pull in on any project anytime. And then finally, just talking a little bit about the fixed price versus CM jobs. It's so important at this stage of pre-con that you set up your proposal and your project the way you want it. If you're going to do a fixed fee type of job, then that's simple. You're going to do an estimate, you're going to put in a total price there. But for a CM type of job, this is something that you may want to have a little bit more, collaboration with the client at this time. And so we have some tools to help you with that. So let's switch over here and I will kind of talk a little bit more about that in detail. Let me just share that screen here with you. All right. So to start, when we were talking a little bit about unit prices. So unit prices, these are things that you can set up specific to your company. Unit prices are set up in the configuration menu initially, but they can be adjusted per project. So in fact, for example, I've got my example here, project manager. When I want to switch from a regular just buyout item to a unit price item, I can go in here and I can select from my pre-filled, pre-created unit unit price items, right, from this list. And what I could do here is then adjust things that I need to. But what's important about this is that what unit prices does is lets you negotiate that price up front with your client, right? In this case, I pulled in my project manager. It's labor units, right? So I've got my labor for my PM. I know what that costs me per hour, and so I have my unit cost. But what this is going to automatically do as well is if I have adjusted the unit price side of it and that's done in this second step when you're setting up a project, you'll have a section called unit prices in here in the project preferences. And at that moment, you could set up all your negotiated unit price rates for your PM, your superintendent, estimator, whatever else it is that you have negotiated with the client, what that unit price is going to be. And so what that does is it allows Red Team to calculate then at the same time in your estimate the cost that you're going to have here and goes ahead and sets up that price. And that's going to show up then if you decide on this project to include your list of negotiated pricing, then the client's going to be able to see exactly what that costs them for the number of hours you're proposing. Whereas you only see the cost. You see the cost on your side, the estimate. That's not visible to your client. The client sees the price separately. And so that's really nice, not only for this initial estimate, but also because it establishes that pricing for all your subsequent change orders. As you move forward, then when you add, for instance, your PM labor into a change order, that's going to automatically pull the same unit price and cost as well. And of course, you can adjust cost as needed, but it will pull that in with the negotiated price that you negotiated with that client, again, which is set up in the preferences with unit prices. So if you don't have unit prices, if you're not the kind of company that's using unit prices right now and it's something you're interested in, it's done, like I said, it's configured initially in your configuration menu. This is something we'd be more than happy to have, reach out to your CSM. We can help you guys get set up if that's something you want to start utilizing. So that's kind of our first tip, unit prices. I also mentioned parametric assemblies. So an example of a parametric assembly, I've got one here. You'll see actually in this phase for all my GMP work. And I've got in here a landscaping assembly. Landscaping, I've got several items. Most of those are variable items, meaning that when I change the overall quantity for landscaping, and in my case, I've got square yards of landscaping that need to be done, it will automatically adjust down all of my variable items. But I also have a non-variable item in here, which was one that basically we're going to need to water landscaping for 5 days. And that one does not change. So you could see, for instance, if I change my quantity here for the overall assembly, it's auto calculating, automatically updating all of that based on the overall quantity changed, except for the watering does not change because I made it non-variable. Now, how to do that, it's just a matter of literally for each item, choosing which item is variable or not. And so in that sense, you can create these nice items that let you just adjust the quantities as needed. After looking at the the drawings, you might realize, well, it's actually going to be about 1800. We need to just change that and it'll update all my amounts accordingly. So those are really nice to use. You can always do that on an individual assembly, or moving into my other tip that I had was the master assemblies. I could decide, well, landscaping often has these items, often have landscaping assemblies like this on jobs that I do, and I want to go ahead and save that as a master assembly. And what that means is that when I then do another estimate, I can pull from either the basic template of landscaping and add my items manually, or I can pull from that master assembly for landscaping and it will pull in all of these items as well for me automatically with the unit costs. Of course, they can be changed. Of course, always my units and unit costs can be changed on a specific estimate, but it will give me that time savings of pulling that in for me. So that's another really nice tool you can use, is again saving those as master assemblies. And then finally, the last thing again I wanted to mention about was your types of proposals, right? So very common to have a fixed price or a CM type of job. Fixed price again is going to be something that you just bid the full amount. Keep in mind, in this case, I'm probably going to go to an estimate like this, and I've got all my estimated costs up top, and I can simply adjust to whatever price I want for that fixed price job. Right? That's going to be how I bid it. I go ahead and just adjust the total price, and that's my bidding number. Done. Or I can have this as a CM type of job. And if I do it that way, obviously this is more for an open book type of job. In this case, what that unlocks in the pre-con phase is things like, for instance, when I put together my proposal to the client, I'll be able to include that negotiated pricing report, which is then going to break down, for instance, any of those unit price items. In this case, I've got my estimator and my PM. Both are unit price items. I can see that because the icon is different. And also I can click here and see that it's not a buyout item. I could convert it to a buyout item if I need to. But in any case, what that will do is it will give on the proposal to the client a summary of the pricing side. They will see that negotiated unit price that you negotiated, the one that you can enter, like I said before, in step 2, and they'll be able to see that. I can also at this time adjust all my overhead rates. And of course, I could still change my total price as needed. But this is just a different type of job. This is a more collaborative exercise with your clients in this case. And so we wanted to give you more of those collaborative tools this time. Of course, it also sets up other things later on in the job. For instance, being able to do to do tying your budget to your SOV and things like that. Those, of course, that's a topic for another day, but did certainly want to just quickly mention it. Okay. Let's close that out and let's go back to our presentation here. And that aside, now we'll talk about bid packages. I want to move now into bid packages. So again, Neil's going to help us here with explaining how the new bid package process works, how to set up bid packages, build new bid packages, search for bidders to add to bid packages, and so forth. And then we'll all switch back over, talk about some tips and some things coming soon as well. All right, Neil.
All right, so now we're going to be delving into bid packages, which are fairly new to everyone, even newer than our estimate. And with these, we are going to be using the new estimate here. And first thing we do is add a bid package. It's found in the same place you would add cost codes. You can then label the bid package. You could put it by the phase you're using, the trade, the type of work that's being done, the vendors you're using, whatever makes it easiest for you to break up the work into the bid package you need. You can change the due date there. So set up for when everyone's bid is due by. And then any special instructions, when you enter these special instructions in, it'll go to all of the actual people you send out any bid requests. So this will go automatically to all of them. And you also had the chance to change the requester as well in there if you want to set a specific project manager. Now, once all that's put together, you would add the cost codes to it. So with this, you can either assign the cost codes, which you can pull directly from your estimate, which is where I'm showing here right now. But if you did forget one, you could use the other button to hit add cost code, and that would actually add a brand new cost code to the bid package and also to the estimate. Now, adding bidders, you go through all your vendors from your actual database. You can use the search option to find any specific vendor you're looking for, and then go ahead and click them. This works just like the cost codes we saw earlier, but one additional option is using the requirements. So by adding the requirements, you can look up specific things like the trade. It'll find every single trade option for any of the vendors that match that. You have distance that you can select from the job site, and also showing here that you can actually select multiple items. So you can have the distance and the trade. So whatever requirements you want, you can select multiple of them to define that list and refine it as much as you need. Really important, which Jennifer's going to talk about later, is qualifications and where to add those. And then we also have credentials, which you would look up if they have their specific credentials on file and if they're up to date. And then there, once I've added all my bidders, you can select as many as you need. You can go ahead and add them all at once. Then at the bottom, you do have your statuses. Here you can select if you know that they're gonna bid, not gonna bid, all those options will come in there. And next thing, once you have selecting a bid option, you can add an amount. Now, adding the amount down here at the bottom will split it across all of the cost codes inside the bid package. You can then go ahead and set them manually. So if one is a little higher or lower than you want from it, you can go ahead and change that. And then you can also select for what they're bidding on. So if you know they're not going to be bidding for the specific item, you can remove it and it won't be listed with everything else. You can also build them by entering all the numbers manually. So if they sent you every single item, you know exactly how much they're going to bid for all the items one at a time. You can go ahead and enter it for each cell here. And then as you'll notice, just like the estimate, it's calculating immediately at the bottom how much their bid's going to be. No waiting to save or anything else. It's going to go ahead and do all that for you as you enter them in. And just entering a couple more there. And there we go, last one. So as we all know, entering bids can take a little while. You can also use keyboard commands instead of the actual mouse. So you actually push down on the keypad instead of actually going up and through the mouse. We have those too. Now I'm committing them. So I'm saying these are locked in. And next we're going to go ahead and just select some of the ones who are not going to be sending anything in, or maybe just changing a couple more options for their statuses. And entering to show one more time, I can enter in just the total amount and I'm not going to make any changes to this one. It's all set and committed. After that, we can open their quote cards. Quote cards are found on the top by clicking the More option. Quote cards can be moved around, so you can actually position them wherever you want. So if you had a lot of bidders, you could pull up the quote card and scroll all the way across to, let's say, if you had a bunch, and compare their actual quote card side by side as I'm doing right now. And for example, showing on that one on there is that they did not actually bid on that one item. So this tells you right now, looking at comparing quote cards, hey, they didn't set for the structural concrete. Everybody else bid on there. So that might be important when you're considering and bid leveling. You can add the attachments in here. So if they sent in a quote specific information, you can add that to the quote card. And you can also select the main contact for the company. And with that, that's the quote cards there. We're actually going to come back to quote cards in the next video to show a little more about them. And then last but not least is you've picked this one as your best. This will lock in all of the numbers for that specific bidder. When you go back to the estimate, it has updated the estimate to show those numbers and match what you selected as the best bid. All right, and
Perfect. All right, we'll just dive right into the quote card part if that works for you.
Yep. All right, so we're just going to jump back in. So same thing like before, we go into the estimate, we go back into a bid package. These ones have been built already. And we're just going to click the three dots. So here I'm just showing that numbers have been entered for some of them, but not all of the actual bidders. So this one is actually filled out already. I can see right now, this is what they've filled out, and this is the bid that's already in draft for them. And here we can reposition the cards however we want, but this one has not been filled out. So one thing that you can change directly per bidder is their due date. So if you had someone specifically you want to make longer out to give them more time to bid, or you want them to bid sooner, you can give specific due dates to bidders. Once again, selecting a contact, adding a attachment. So if they sent in their bid and you want to have it on file for everyone to look at, or they sent in a specific piece of information about their bid, you can add that there as well. And now we can actually add the quote directly inside the quote card. So if you are comparing to, you don't have to do it directly inside the bid. You can do it directly in the quote card itself. Same thing as before. Once you enter it in, it's going to go ahead and set it out across all of them. And you can select also the items. All of them were selected there, and update the bidding notes. So if you know that this one bid at this time and you want to add some additional context, you have that as well to make each quote card and each bid a little more specific. Here we're just going to go ahead and remove one or two of them. And you can also change the status inside. So here you can go ahead and commit it. So it's committed just like the others that are already in there. And that is all for the quote cards and a quick, easy update on that one.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you, Neil. All right. So let's talk a little bit about some tips. And again, I'll share these tips and I'll go in and look a little bit more detailed on them. But tips we would normally recommend for bid packages. First and foremost, we always recommend when you're building a bid package that you want to think about how you're planning to buy out the job, right? If you are, you expect that, all of your site work items, maybe under several cost codes, are all going to be contracted to the same bidder, that you're likely going to solicit bids from maybe several bidders for multiple cost codes, and very likely your goal is to then contract all of that work, let's say for several cost codes and site work, to one sub. That's how you would want to think about building your bid package. So you certainly don't have to. By all means, you can build packages however you'd like, but we always recommend that if you think about, how you're going to group that for buyout later on, that's kind of a good way to organize your bid packages. Certainly, it may not end up that way, right? Certainly, you may end up with bids from several different companies. Some of them are going to cover part of that scope that you had in that bid package, and you may end up deciding to split the scope that's in that bid package between multiple subs and contract it out that way. And you will have no problem doing that. By no means are we saying you have to set it up that way from the beginning. We're simply making a tip or a suggestion that that's a good way to think about how you organize your bid packages. So that's always helpful. The other thing is being descriptive under your assemblies, those items. We kind of saw an example, the landscaping one I showed earlier, for instance, where you could have all the specific items. And this is really important just because this helps you to tune your bid leveling, right? If I don't have enough detail, if all I have is one cost code called, electrical, it's not going to be very useful for me to then get several quotes with all the different pieces of what needs to happen with the electrical and be able to actually, leverage those quotes and figure out who should be doing it. So you want at least enough detail of who's including certain items or excluding certain items so that you have a true quantitative comparison. You really want to be able to level those and look at who's including what. So we do recommend, be descriptive, include as many items as you think are needed, especially when you're thinking about what you want your subs to exclude or include in their bid. The other tip we'd say is use vendor qualifications, right? We just saw this. Neil mentioned it again. I'll show it here in just a minute when I pull the actual screen up. But you could set up those vendor qualifications are entirely customizable. They're 100% customizable to your company, so you could set qualifications however it is you'd like. And again, I'll show you that in just a minute. And then finally, the status, or sorry, not final, but statuses to keep track of bids and quotes, best quotes, like Neil again just showed, that you can use those statuses to be updating. If somebody tells you, you call them up and you say, hey, I sent you an email to bid on this job, and they say, well, I never saw it. I can't bid it. I'm busy. I have too much work anyway. You could just go in and mark them as not bidding. Same thing if you want to update statuses to track who your best quote is and things like that. Again, we'll look a little bit more detail in just a second. And then finally, the quote cards. Neil also mentioned using the quote cards to see more information and do your bid leveling that way. So let's just go in and take a look at all those things. Open up here. Flex. Okay. And I want to go into a bid package. All right. So again, thinking about, I put together this bid package thinking that I plan to ideally contract out this work to the same bidder. And so that's why I built the bid package this way. Of course, like Neil said, I can always just add more cost codes to a bid package as needed and adjust it at any point. It doesn't have to happen before I send this out or anything like that. I can be adjusting this as we go. Again, we're going towards a more collaborative model here. And so thinking about how we buy out the job is important. Again, being descriptive about the cost codes, going back to that second tip. Those are the items here. It doesn't need to be a super long description. What we mean here is just trying to detail out what items you think you would want to know your subs are going to be including or excluding. And that's where we kind of get that breakdown. We recommend being detailed here. And of course, like Neil mentioned earlier, you could add even more detail under the narrative. You just click those little dots. You could add a much more detailed scope if you need to. And then our third tip, the searching based on better vendor qualifications. So adding new bidders here, Neil did mention it, showed it very briefly, but here under my requirements, the experience, the trades, and the distance, these are all standard ones we just offer, but everything under qualifications are entirely customizable. Like I said, you could have qualifications for the size of the company. You could have qualifications for the location that they are. You could have qualifications for the type of business that they are, whether they have certain credentials like being, women owned or minority owned businesses, literally anything you want. These qualifications, like I said, are entirely customizable. This list you're seeing in our test database, but this is something that you can set up on your own. Now, if you are a PM on this call or an estimator on this call, you may not have the ability to configure qualifications. So it is something you would need to reach out to your admin for. This all gets configured in the menu on the left-hand side when you're logged into RedTeam, the left-hand side menu called configuration. There is a place in there to configure vendor qualifications. In fact, if you go in there and you don't see any options here, when you go to try to search for bidders to add to a bid package, you won't see any qualifications if your company has not set any up. And so that is something that you would want to consider setting up if it helps you, of course, right? All right, and then let's talk a little bit before I move to actually the quote cards one. We did get a question that I was wanting to talk about, and one of the questions that came up in our Q&A here was about tying the estimate to the quotes. And so Neil kind of just mentioned that a little bit. And yes, so that's exactly what we do, in fact, is that when you have, let's say, for instance, I decided that this company here, and right now this company is another little just mini tip for you guys too, by the way, right? Is when you're looking at which vendor it is, this is called John Many Distinctive Landscapes. I could change this, right? Something that makes more sense to me. But anyway, in any case, what I could do here is I could see that this company is only planning to do the landscaping. They don't plan to do the sidewalks. But maybe I decide, you know what? They've got a better price though for that than anyone else, and I'd rather just find somebody else to do the sidewalks part. That would be perfectly fine. What you can do is when you select that as your best quote, it will automatically update that in the estimate and tie that vendor only to the landscaping work, and the concrete sidewalks remains open as far as waiting for me to, yeah, you can see here. So landscaping now I have selected, we can even see the company that I selected for landscaping has those items, but concrete sidewalks, no. We do have quotes for them, but we have not yet selected a vendor. So we will in fact tie that to back to the cost estimate. It's a great question though. All right. And then going back to my final tip as far as utilizing those quote cards. So you saw again how we open those quote cards. We can open them here. We can open many at once, right? Keep that in mind. That's the whole idea, is to make this collaborative. I want to be able to look at multiple quote cards at the same time, move around. And then the whole idea here, right, which with quote cards is not only can I see more details about this specific quote, I can, update things like the contact or load their quote in or things like that. But I can also see, for instance, here, their inclusions and exclusions. This lets me level my quotes, right? I can see what is the best choice for me from an economic perspective here. I can decide which one I should go with. And as you select bidders, the quote card then summarizes those leveling adjustments by bidder. So I can see what items are missing, right? What scope maybe I need to get from another source. What else do they exclude that I might need to buy elsewhere, is essentially the idea. And so that is what I get in my quote card. Of course, I've already selected this one as best, but let's open that back up and the quote cards, you'll easily be able to see any items they've excluded, right? It also shows me, I don't have that in this example right here, but let's say I have one of these vendors, this company here, John Mini Distinctive, they might have actually been including quotes from a different bid package. That would also show in my quote card. So if I had in a different bid package selected items that this guy is going to include in their quote, those also show here. Even though I'm not looking at that bid package, it gives me the full picture of what this company is including for the quote in this case, and what they're not as well. So the whole intent of that quote card is meant to give you a little bit further detail than just what you get from this bid package screen, to be able to really truly level all those quotes and find your best vendor, your best bidder here. Okay. All right. So let's move along. I'm going to go back to the presentation here. I want to make sure we get enough time. All right, so I'm going to very quickly touch on a new thing. So we're going to talk about some new stuff. So I know it has certainly been on the forefront of people's minds about being able to send this bid package and have the vendor update that. We saw a lot today about how you can update that. You can go in and select those items. Neil showed how we can enter the dollar amounts either by their total quote amount and it'll distribute that evenly, or that you can go in there and distribute the dollar amount by each cost code in the bid package. You can do all of that. Of course, that begs the question, how can I make the sub do that? How do I make the bidder do that? And so I don't have to make those adjustments, right? Totally understand that. So our plan for this quarter is to introduce a bid form, a new bid form. This bid form will replace the request for quote, the one that you guys um, may be used to, right? You've seen the RFQ we have today. Not too different process for your sub. Your sub, it's transparent. They're still going to continue to get emails the way you've sent them if you're sending RFQs out now. The difference will be in what opens. When they open that, rather than opening the request for quote, we will be opening the bid form. It's very similar, so keep in mind it's not a huge difference here. But what it does is it's more collaborative. We're trying to bring a more collaborative approach to this. We want them to, on that screen, be able to be adjusting, seeing exactly what you set up, right? They're going to see your exact bid package. In fact, let's just look at it right now as an example, that your vendors will be able to go in and see a bid form. I'm going to tell you right now, this is very much a still in development thing. We are giving you this preview today, by the way, just as a quick update so you can see what's coming. It will be a little bit more polished than what you see on the screen today, but it is essentially this collaborative form where they'll be able to, on directly on the form, see your terms, when it's due, but more importantly, we'll be able to see all those items that you built into that bid package. And from there, the vendor right on this screen can enter their amount, same way that Neil was showing. Very similar to how you would enter it for them on the flex side if they were to do it. They could tell you, for instance, yep, I'll do all of that. And my quote's for $50,000. And they could just enter it in that way. Or they can go in, right? It'll distribute it just like we do. Or they could go in and say, oh, no, I'll give you the breakdown, right? And they could enter how much. They could even decide, what they're not including. Maybe this company's not going to do any floors, right? But they'll do the painting. And they're going to say for painting, that's going to be 20,000, making these numbers up, but of course that's how they'll do it. This is very collaborative. The moment they're entering this information here, it is updating in your bid package. It's updating on your side. So you immediately see their changes. You immediately see their numbers. They also can, of course, upload a quote or attachments that they want as supporting documentation to this. But the whole point of this is that it is super collaborative, that at any moment they can be making changes that are immediately available to the estimator to be leveling with their other bids. You could call the guy up, tell him, hey, we need to talk about this, open up the bid form. You could have them be adjusting the quote right at that moment. So again, just trying to make this really collaborative and make it immediately available for all of the important interested parties here. All right, and that is the bid form. We included a little screen grab of it so that when you get the slides later today, you'll have one. But finally, that just brings us to kind of just final tips for that bid form and for managing bid changes, right? Now, just a couple of small tips of things you could do today to effectively manage bids and bid updates. One would be updating your bid date. You can update that bid date by bid package or by a specific bidder. We actually have both options available. And that would be, for instance, in here in this bid package for exterior work, right? We saw where we could change that due date for everybody up here at the top, or we might know, what, this guy is always a little bit slow, and I would just want to change the bid date for him to be a couple days earlier. That is perfectly fine. You could do that for a specific bidder as well from their quote card. So it's entirely up to you. The other kind of small tip you could utilize is keep in mind that when you send out these RFQs and all the details about it, that we send automatically a link to the project plan room where all the drawings and plans and specs are located. And at any given time, if you ever wanted to post a message in that plan room, we call it a broadcast message, something that shows for everybody who accesses that plan room as soon as they enter the plan room. You also have the ability to do that. It's a preference on the project. It's right here. It's under the plan room section. You can search, of course, as well here for that. But if I enter a message here, something like, all bids are due no later than 5 p.m. I can absolutely have a message like that. It's going to auto save. What that will do is create a banner message on that plan room. And so anybody who's accessing that plan room will see that immediately. So another just kind of small tip of a way um, that you can manage your bids and your bidders at that time. And then finally, a couple that are coming soon. Want to talk a little bit more again with those same initiatives for this quarter of getting that bid form. One of them is the one we already kind of talked about, which is collaborating on that bid form. Not only are you going to be able to enter items there, but you'll also be able to have a conversation. We're going to have a chat section where you can have a conversation with that bidder, right? You can document all of that. You can certainly do it over the phone, but we all know we like to have stuff in writing. So we will be able to, on that same bid form, very much, again, if you're a current client, like we do in all our collaborative consoles, they can go in and be entering, supporting documentation or asking questions or having a conversation back and forth with the bidder on that particular bid form. So we will have that as part of the whole bid form update. And then, in addition to that, we're planning to introduce the idea of sending messages. So you'll have a way to very easily send a message to all bidders or to a specific bidder. It'll be up to you. You could send a one-off message to one bidder. You forgot to. Did you mean to not include this item? Did you mean to include this item? Something like that. Or you could do a message that will send out, essentially it's an email, but it'll also post it to every bid form for every bidder that you have. Let's say you've got 50 bidders and I need to let everybody know that the bid date's been pushed by 3 days. Well, not only can I go update the bid date, but I could then say send a message and it'll push that to everybody's bid form. Say, hey, the bid date's been updated. So we're going to have a messaging option as well. I don't have anything to show for that today, unfortunately, but do rest assured that is part of this quarter's initiative to have the bid form out. So you will be getting that feature as well. All right. And that was a lot of content, but that does bring us towards the end here. We do have just kind of a final slide here for you all. If you do feel you want to connect with your CSM to talk through any of the content we talked about here today, of course, feel free to do that. You can scan right there and connect with them, as well as webinar recordings, this and previous webinar recordings you can get access to. Like I mentioned in the beginning of the call, everybody who's registered is going to get a copy of the slides and recordings from today. So don't worry about that. You will be getting those. But in case you do want to, for instance, connect with your CSM or get some other recordings of past webinars we've done, feel free to do that here. All right, we do hope you guys found value in today's webinar. I am going to see if we have any kind of final questions. If you have questions, please feel free to stick around and ask them. But that is the total of our content today. We do hope this was really helpful for you guys. We are really excited about, I will tell you from the product side, very excited to get out some of these additional features for bid packages for you guys. We would be more than happy to help you walk through turning this on. So just another last note is you you may go into Red Team today and then say, oh, I don't see bid packages. Okay. So keep in mind that is something you have to turn on or opt into. It's a preference for the project. If it's something you need some help walking through, please, again, reach out to your CSM through here, reach out to us through chat, really, however it is easiest for you to reach out. We have all the resources here to help you with that. We'd be more than happy to walk you and your team through those next stages to getting you into bid packages. Again, it's a very collaborative process that we're excited about. We've got lots of our clients already using it. We would love to get even more of you guys invested and using that feature heavily. So please feel free to reach out to us if you need any assistance whatsoever, or go back and watch today's recording and follow along. It's completely up to you. Okay. Yep. Looks like we're all good. In case anybody was typing a question right now, we're going to close out today's webinar. In case you happen to be, please just direct that either to our support chat or to your CSM, and we'll be more than happy to answer that for you guys. We hope you all have a great rest of your Wednesday, a good week, and we'll see you at the next webinar.
Thanks for attending.